we are monitoring what could become a tense scene in San Diego, where there are a lot of organized protesters who've decided to descend on that city's convention center. Why? Well, good old Donald Trump is about to arrive, and he'll be taking the stage there. And you are looking at live pictures of the scene outside the venue. More than 1,000 demonstrators are on site, with more coming. It's been very organized and sort of pre-scheduled. Police have been bracing for the unrest since yesterday. Some protests are spontaneous. This one is not. At least 4 major groups are organizing around this Trump rally, including the San Diego Democratic Party. Some groups are encouraging people to try to get inside the event to disrupt it. So there is potential for unrest both outside and inside the venue. It could be what many a Trump event is, a made-for-TV spectacle. We will try not to allow the spectacle, though, to become the news. This, of course, follows a series of chaotic scenes at recent Trump events, some of which have turned ugly. Authorities have warned demonstrators that they will not tolerate any illegal activity tonight. This is Trump's second stop in California today. He held a rally in Fresno. Protesters were ready for him there, too. That rally wrapped up just a few hours ago. Now, look, we've talked about this on our show following the unrest at Trump's rally in Anaheim just 2 days ago. This country couldn't be more divided between urban America and rural America. These anti-Trump protests are taking place in areas with a heavy Hispanic presence. And when Trump goes into urban American cities with significant Latino populations, he gets heavy protests and perhaps sometimes even unrest. Nearly 30% of San Diego's population is Latino. That is significantly higher than the national average. So let's go to the scene right now out in California. Jacob Rascone is amid some of the protesters outside the San Diego Convention Center there. And as we noted, Jacob, this is very organized. And usually with organization comes peace, usually. What are you seeing?
So that's how it usually starts. What we tend to see is that if the protesters stay through the rally until the supporters are coming out, then we see a lot of clashes. Let me take you around first. This is sort of the walk of shame. Supporters walk by and you have people saying, okay, bigotry this way, move along. And then we have over here, of course, the police presence. They're about everywhere we go. And then I'm going to swing around and show you, Chuck, because we've talked about more people showing up. We've had parades, people marching in, and we just had a new one show up off in the distance here, just about a few hundred feet away, waving the Mexican flags over there. A lot of them. We're expecting that there are hundreds of them. And so if you add it all up, you probably have around 2,000 protesters who've come out. And there's been a lot of shouting. There's been a lot of back and forth yelling. But so far, nothing physical, Chuck. But again, what we see is that it tends to just escalate and build. And if supporters come and clash with the protesters, and the anger's been building for hours, then is when you see a lot of things go wrong. The police step in, and they say that they really put their foot down and say, okay, no more. This has to stop.
And Jacob, have you seen, is he getting a big turnout himself? I mean, is it going to be a packed house inside there?
In fact, let's swing around and see if we can show you off in the distance there the line of people still going into the convention center. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it beyond the protesters, but Chuck, they've been flowing into the convention center since before 7 o'clock this morning. And we know from the Trump campaign, they say that they have given away more than 20,000 tickets. And usually when they say they've given out a certain amount of tickets, not that many people show up, but close to it. This is a massive convention center. We expect more than 10,000 people will end up showing up easily. They're still flowing in.
All right, Jacob Rascone outside the San Diego Convention Center. Jacob, thanks very much. I want to bring in Ruben Navarrete. He's a nationally syndicated columnist with the Washington Post, Daily Beast contributor. More importantly, a California native who happens to reside in San Diego. And I've known him when he was, I think, a columnist at the San Diego Union Tribune. So, Ruben, good to see you.
Chuck, good to be with you. Longtime fan, first-time guest.
Yes, well, let's not make it the last time. Walk me through what you're seeing there in the Hispanic community as far as this reaction to Trump, not just today, but in San Diego over the last few months.
That's right. Chuck, it's been happening in these Latino cities like Albuquerque earlier this week, Fresno this morning, San Diego, who knows where it'll be tomorrow or next week. As the California primary nears on June 7th and Donald Trump makes more of a presence in California, you're going to see this more and more. This state is unlike any other. The largest state in the country is 39% Hispanic. If you factor in also people who are married to Hispanics or have them as close friends, you're talking 70, 80% of the population. So people here are deeply offended by Donald Trump and the way that he has, over the last 11 months, effectively turned America's largest minority into a piñata for his own benefit, for his own pleasure, for his own amusement, to try to get political mileage out of the fact that he's attacked us and ridiculed us. And clearly the folks in San Diego are saying no more, no mas.
I'm curious, you know, we're watching this issue inside the Republican Party, and obviously right after the 2012 election, before Donald Trump showed up on their doorstep, you know, the Republican Party talked about they've got to improve things with Hispanics. I guess what is going to have a greater impact on the future of the Hispanic voter in the Republican Party? What happened with Prop 187 and Pete Wilson, you know, 20 years ago, or Donald Trump? Is Trump sort of a continuation of this, of what Prop 187 began in California with Hispanics and Republicans?
That's a very good question, Chuck. It's a continuation in the sense that it seems very familiar. America's finest city has a foul odor today, and it's Donald Trump and his campaign. There's a familiar sense that Latinos have seen this movie before. Somebody using, as Pete Wilson did in 1994, Hispanics for their own political benefit, using us as a piñata, as a foil to his routine. But the flip side of this, and what makes it a great question, is that Donald Trump is very much the opposite of what we've learned in California since Prop 187. You're right. Up until Donald Trump came along, the assumption was that Hispanics, if they didn't go with the Republican Party didn't do right by Hispanics, they couldn't win anymore. Donald Trump is testing the theory. He's saying, look, I can get enough support from white voters, from voters who don't play that game, who don't want us to pander to Hispanics. Let's roll the dice and see what happens. We're going to wait and see if ultimately he can get enough of a turnout from mainstream voters to counter all the Latino votes he's bleeding.
You know, the Republican Party of today in California has been trying to reach out to the Hispanic community. And in fact, there's a robust conservative Hispanic community in California, all up and down the state, particularly in San Diego. How are they reacting to Trump?
It's a good question. They're very uncomfortable about it, but I've got to fault them on the one sense. They've learned enough not to antagonize Hispanics because the numbers are so great. We're in a deep blue state, and it is to nobody's benefit that I live in a state that's my home state is so incredibly deep blue that the California legislature can pass any bill it wants without a single Republican vote. If you have that formula in a red state, it's bad for business, and if you have that formula in a blue state, it's bad for business. You need to have Ohio. You need to have checks and balances. We don't have that in California. So they don't antagonize us, but they have really been asleep and gutless, I will say. California Republicans have been gutless and spineless in terms of confronting Donald Trump and versions of him as they've come along. They just don't want to deal with it. So whenever racism and nativism pops up, they don't confront it. And they want to get a pass for that and somehow get credit for that. Okay, well, you're not antagonizing us the way Pete Wilson did, but you really are gutless in terms of being able to call out the stuff when you see it.
And then, while I have you here, I might as well talk a little bit about the Democratic side of things. Can Bernie Sanders make inroads with Latinos?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's a poll out this week from the Public Policy Institute in California that shows the race in California in advance of June 7th to be a dead heat. 46% for Clinton, 44% for Bernie Sanders. Oh my gosh, I do believe it, within the margin of error. And what that tells me is that Bernie Sanders is making inroads with Hispanics. Hispanics have not warmed up to Hillary Clinton, at least in the primary. They're prepared to vote for her against Donald Trump for sure. But to put it bluntly, persona non grata, Barack Obama has become persona non grata with Hispanics over the deportation issue. And that's hurting Hillary Clinton because they know she was there and watched it all happen with a front row seat.
And it is still a problem, despite all of the executive orders that Barack Obama has signed. Yeah. That issue of deportations is still hanging over his head and Hillary Clinton's head.
Yeah, because the numbers are huge, Chuck. 3 million people, 400,000 people a year for 8 years, 3 million people, a lot of separated families. I told people all along, if you want to really get Latinos, you want to get their goat, if you want to go after them, attack the family. The most important institution to Latinos is not the church and certainly not government. It's the family. And Barack Obama deliberately, for political reasons, separated hundreds of thousands of families and deported 3 million people. He's got to wear that. He owns that.